delighted to be here this evening, as I have been teaching your work for over a decade in classes ranging from introductory composition to women's literature to memoir writing. Your short stories, novels, essays, and memoirs seem to fit in all of these classes because, among the many, many other things that your writing is about, it is always a part about writing. More specifically, it is about the importance of preserving stories and sharing them. I think, for example, of the two lovers in Children of the Sea, the opening story in Crick Crack, who wrote to each other even knowing that the other might never read what was written. There's a particularly moving moment in that story. One of the refugees on the boat asked the young man to write his name in his journal, knowing the young man is about to throw the journal overboard in order to get rid of excess weight. It is important to this man that his name be written down, even though he knows that no one will ever see it. And of course, the very title of that book, Crick Crack, invokes an oral Haitian storytelling tradition. Can you talk a little bit about the value of storytelling in Haitian culture and to you, both in terms of the oral tradition and the written word?
Thank you so much for doing this. Well, I often say to people that and it's true, as I mentioned in the piece, that my best teachers, my best writing teachers, were my aunts and grandmothers, who were storytellers. And storytelling, I think all tradition, sort of the continuity was when I was growing up a very strong part of how things were passed on, how lessons were taught in our household. So that's what made me want to tell stories, and was listening to stories, and it was a kind of gift, someone would give you a story, and it was a moment where children and adults could interact in this free way. And my grandmother used to put coins in her hair so that we would want to comb her hair and tell us these stories at that time. So imagine the battles to comb hair for so everything for me is based in that tradition, and that's why I wanted to call the story collection Crick Crack, because it's almost like it's a call and response. They called and I tried to respond.
You just read to us from your book, Create Dangerously, The Immigrant Artist at Work, which examines what it means to be an immigrant artist in a country in crisis. Can you comment on what you see as the role and responsibility of the immigrant artist, and how you see yourself as fulfilling that role?
Well, writers I don't think writers don't like to be assigned roles. I think art is sort of, that should be total freedom, which is why I think so many of our writers in a certain period through the dictatorship tried so hard to continue producing their art. So the book was sort of a tribute to people whom I admire, writers like Marie-Vieux Chauvet, and photographer Daniel Morel, and others who practiced their art under very difficult circumstances, and through their courage gave us this gift. So I think the role for anybody who is an artist is whatever they'd like to make it. Trinket Bumar said that writing is the way she participates in the struggle, and I think it means different things to different people.
The January 12th, 2010 earthquake changed things for you, for everyone in Haiti, and for everyone who knew someone in Haiti. 2 years later, as you well know, people are still without homes, and there are still schools and hospitals that need to be rebuilt. You've written and spoken extensively about the earthquake, including the children's picture book. You've narrated a documentary, raised money for nonprofits, and continue to visit and help out in a variety of ways. In an interview after the earthquake, you said of Haitian artists, "It would be impossible for your art to stay the same if your country is so altered, if the people you know have been changed so much by a large event." Can you comment on how your art may have changed?
Well, I think so many of us changed that day because many of us lost loved ones, and you know, even if you're in the diaspora, Haiti is sometimes like a relative who's sick, and you get sort of, and that you know, when bad things are happening, you feel like, you know, you get more sensitive, more attached, and so I think after the earthquake there was even a deeper attachment. I saw kids who, you know, who would have never identified openly, but after the earthquake, you know, they would say things like, "That's my blood down there," you know, high school kids who suddenly, I mean, there was suddenly, you know, I think a desire to connect. I know many Haitian Americans who go now on a regular basis. Some just picked up a suitcase and with school supplies and went back. So I think we're all affected. I mean, in terms of, you know, I thought soon after that it was suddenly, I was reading books that were written before the earthquake, and they felt like historical novels because this whole physical landscape had been so altered. And there's been a lot of art afterwards, I think, that tries to address that change and the way people are living now. But it's an ongoing process in just trying to understand this new landscape, which is not just change physically, but also politically.
Last December, the editors of Foreign Policy named you one of the top 100 global thinkers for affirming the moral necessity of art, even in the worst of circumstances. Last winter, you started reading to children in 80 cent circles. And again, this is from an interview, but you said that some adults challenged the idea of telling you we need bread and not books, to which you replied, you can have both. Can you comment on how and why books are important for those who experience such a devastating tragedy?
Well, I work with an organization called Lili that was reading to children in the camps, and they would hire you know, young people in Haiti who did this reading, sometimes people who were living in the tent cities themselves. And when you go around with them, you would see, there's so many children who were not in school even before the earthquake and suddenly had no place to go, and it was as if rock stars were coming when the readers were coming, and they wanted to touch the books and they wanted to hold the books. And one of the books we read was written by my husband. He wrote it in Creole, and for kids to recognize themselves in these books, even under the circumstances. I think we all deserve a childhood, and that's what you see when you see the kids listening to, you know, in the heat. Even their parents get into it, and for that moment at least, they're not worried about bread. They're not worried about the heat. They're just enthralled by a story, and ultimately the dream, you know, is that they will have both. That you don't sacrifice one for the other. And in this book, people often say, well, were there writers in your family? And so I go back to Alice Walker's essay In Search of Our Mother's Garden, in that sometimes the reality of our lives robs us of the possibility of art. And the amazing thing about Haiti is that you see how difficult the circumstances are, and people have still managed to create a great literature, an amazing visual art, fabulous music, as you just heard. So it's that's what inspires me. That's the crowd I stand in the middle of.